ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 1 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us, joined by the one and only David Starr, the NASCAR veteran, 6-time NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race winner. He's raced in all 3 NASCAR National Series, and he joins us right now. David, appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us. Glad that we can get this thing going on episode number 1 of Let's Go Racing.
Dude, this is awesome, man. You know, you and Dominic, when y'all came to me and said, hey, man, let's do a podcast. I'm like, really? Y'all really want to do a podcast, And as we talked about it, it's like, wow, that'd be pretty cool. You guys, yourself and Dominic, y'all have so much knowledge and so much from a media standpoint. And, hey, man, anytime we want to talk about racing in general, NASCAR racing, IndyCar, dirt racing, any kind of racing, man, you know what my heart is. I love it. So I'm excited about our podcast and looking forward to it. Yeah,
no doubt about it. Dominic Aragon joins us from theracingexperts.com. He is one of our co-hosts here, and he'll be with us each and every week. Dominic, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on board, man.
I'm excited to be here, guys. This has been something that we've been talking about doing for a long time, and I got to give credit where credit's due, man. Tyler, you're the one who really got all this rolling. I mean, we were certainly talking about doing something, collaborating over the years and doing something, but man, you really hit the ground running this summer with getting what we needed to get to where we're at now. So I'm really excited to be here. This is going to be a fun thing we do every Monday night and out on Tuesdays, and this will be the first of many of them.
Yes, certainly so. We plan to be with you each and every Tuesday, and there's a lot of ways to catch Let's Go Racing with David Starr, whether you're on Apple, Spotify, Google Play. We also have a video version on YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts or if you watch the video version, whatever it may be, make sure to subscribe to the show and give us a friendly rating. Give us those 5 stars. 4 stars are for haters. 5 stars are for winners. And so we like winners around here. Victory Lane is where the place to be. So definitely would appreciate that. Also, we're on social media, facebook.com, the Let's Go Racing with David Starr Facebook page, and also on Twitter at Star Podcast. Of course, that's with 2 R's, is where you can get all the show information there. So we would certainly appreciate that. David, tell us about this podcast. What are we hoping to accomplish? I know that you've got so many fans that have been loyal to you for over however many years you've been involved in this sport, man. What are you looking to put out there to the folks as we get this podcast going?
Man, Tyler, that's a great question. I love what we're doing here. Anytime you have a chance to talk about what we do and what we know, I'm all about that. I love our sport, man. I just love racing in general, but to be part of our NASCAR family, whether you're media, a team member, a driver, or a fan, we're all family here, and, I want the race fans, people that are in this business are a part of it. And when I say a part of it, I mean, our sport doesn't operate without the race fans, without the fans in attendance, and the fans watching it on TV, there is no sport, So the fans is what make our sport what it is. So if we can bring some great stories, experience that I have, that you have had Dominic have had, and we can bring in guests. I want to bring in other drivers. I want to bring in crew chiefs. I want to bring in crew members. I want to bring other media guys in, bring in some fans in. But if we could understand, what makes them, why they love our sport so much, hear their stories, that's one thing cool about our industry of auto racing, NASCAR racing, is the people. We're in the people business, and I've always found it intriguing, not only the people I work with, the team owners I've driven for, the crew chiefs I work with, but everybody has a story. I'm always intrigued and inspired by, like you guys, Dominic, did you wake up one morning and say, hey man, I'm going to be a media guy? You know what I mean? And Tyler, just listening to you speak, your voice, I mean, you're a television radio guy. You know what I mean? You just, when you open your mouth, you know this, like, that's what you do, you know? And, but you know, it's always great to hear the race fans and the people, the competitors, people that I'm at war with. When we're done, the race is over with and you have a chance to go to dinner or catch up under a rain delay. It's always cool to hear, you know, it's like, man, did you wake up when you were 5 years old? Did you go to bed and wake up the next morning and say, I wanted to be a race car driver, or I wanted to be a crew chief, or I wanted to be a mechanic or a fabricator? It's always interesting to me to hear people's stories, man. Was your dad an engine builder? I mean, did your mom work in the business? And, you know, it's if you can just slow down a little bit, which that's hard for us to do, because being a part of this great sport, this great industry, I mean, it's fast paced, we're moving, but if you ever have a chance to really slow down and listen to people you work with, and even the sponsors, I mean, the sponsors that make the sport what it is, if you can hear their stories and about how they started their company, what they started with and where they came from, it's so interesting. So I love what we're doing here, the podcast, so we can learn about other people and how they got brought into this great sport of auto racing, you know, whether it's IndyCar racing, drag racing, or NASCAR racing. It's always intriguing to me, and I'm always paying attention. You know, I'm inspired by people, you know what I mean? I know from me personally, you know, a lot of people don't have a clue what it took, you know, and I don't even know if there's a lot of people that would have went through what I went through to get to living the dream I live. You know what I mean? I just sacrifices, the hard work, the begging. There's so much to everybody, myself, you guys, other people are going to have on this show, to hear their stories and to learn from it and to be inspired by it. You know what I mean? So I love what we're doing here. I think it's going to be cool.
No doubt about it. And the fact that this could all come together, you know, we've heard so many bad things with this pandemic, and it's all affected us in one way, shape, or another. But I got to say, guys, you know, I'm a person that I always look for positives in the negative, always try to find something good that comes out of a bad situation. And I don't think we would be here doing this podcast if it weren't for what's transpired in the last couple of months. Dominic and I have been trying to find more things to do with our time, more ways to grow and get more involved in this sport. And, you know, we've been connected with David for a while, and, you know, without the time away from normalcy, I don't think we're here doing this show. I think that, you know, this was a benefit of sorts, you know, something good that came out of a bad situation. You know, Dominic, you and I have known each other a long time, but, you know, this kind of sped up the process of us doing something like this together and get David involved here.
Absolutely. We'd been talking for a long time of wanting to collaborate, wanting to partner up. We want to do something, and just it felt like we never really got the time to get around to it. But the pandemic, and fortunately with all the effects it's had, some good has come out of it. And you're right. This is one of those ventures that has been good for all of us. And I was talking with David actually about this last week, and I was like, David, somebody told you 8 months ago you'd be doing a podcast, what would you have said? He's like, I wouldn't have believed it. And it's just amazing how you can plan and do different things, but different things end up happening ultimately. And this is one of those. You know what? The pandemic has happened, unfortunately, but hey, we're here. And this is one of the good things that has come out of it.
You know, to kind of elaborate on that, you know, when we get to a racetrack, I mean, it's a grind. We fly in, get our rent car, go to the racetrack. There's usually techs you're going through tech, you know, you're making sure your car is legal and making some adjustments. And, you know, I like to be involved on tech day with my team. And then you leave the racetrack, go get dinner with your team, meet with some sponsors. And then the next day, and then you go to the hotel and you go to bed, be ready for the next day. The next day's practice, sometimes qualifying. And then sometimes we race that day or that night. So, I mean, there's a lot going on in a short period of time. And kind of like what you guys are talking about during this pandemic, and man, we got to talk about NASCAR here in a minute. What they have done, I think they were one of the first ones to bring professional sports back on television. You know what I mean? And we got to give NASCAR some kudos, and we'll get to that. But I want to say that when I would come to Kansas City and be ready to race, it was weird. I would come there and we have a little bit of time to kill because we wasn't at the racetrack going through tech, and we wasn't at the racetrack for practice, and we wasn't getting ready to qualify because there wasn't any. There was no practice. There was no qualifying. You just unloaded your race car and your team went to work. They pushed it through tech, went through all the technical inspection stuff. And when that was done and your car was approved, you pushed it to pit road and you got ready to race, so there was some time for us to do stuff that we wasn't used to doing. I wasn't used to, spending the day before we raced at a restaurant or meeting up with some people. So it did open up opportunities and change things the way what we were used to, going to a race look like, So anyway, it was kind of cool that, you guys, I loved y'all's ideal. And as I thought about it and listened to y'all, it was like, that's pretty cool. Anytime we can talk about what we love, that's easy. So why don't we do a podcast?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, David. And this year, let's dive into it. 2020 has been a strange year for all of us one way or the other. David, you changed teams after the pandemic, went to a part-time schedule, had a nice finish there at Homestead, Miami to close out 2020. Take us through what your season was like.
Well, there you go. And Dominic, Tyler, it wasn't Homestead, Miami. You know what I mean? And that
Phoenix.
And that, you look at that. That was a big change in our sport. For years, ever since I've been involved in NASCAR racing, 22, 23 years, our season ended in Miami, Homestead, Florida. And for the first time, we went out west to Phoenix. And man, that was incredible. But, when the season started, I was with JD Motorsports. I did a deal with Johnny Davis and was able to change numbers. We got number 6 and we had everything set to race full time in 2020. I was excited about what we were going to do, the sponsor we had. And man, it was awesome, man. We kicked off the season at Daytona, which everybody loves Daytona. Speed Weeks is awesome, man. I love Speed Weeks. I love racing at Daytona. But it's the enthusiasm and all the new paint colors, all the new sponsors, and everybody's excited to be there. And you see all the race fans, and you got Volusia County, and you got New Smyrna. You got racing going on everywhere around that Daytona Beach, Florida area, which was awesome. We left Daytona. We went out west. We went to the West Coast, and we did California, Phoenix, Vegas. Then I think it was the 5th race of the season. It might have been
Atlanta.
the 6th. Was it the 5th race?
Atlanta.
We went to Atlanta, man. And, I was like, I was watching, I flew into Atlanta and I was watching the news on they had a TV screen going and it was like breaking news. The NBA had just been canceled. I'm like, man, what is going on in our country? The NBA's been canceled, So, anyway, drove over to the, to Atlanta Motor Speedway, and we were having the tech day the next day, and we were going to practice and qualify all that same day. And man, before we even was able to really start our day, NASCAR called a meeting and told everybody, hey, we needed to go home. We was going to, that we wasn't going to race in Atlanta, and we were going to racing was going to be shut down for a little while. And it was like, man, that was just unbelievable. Who would ever thought any major sport would have been shut down? And you could see it happening around you. And it wasn't surprising. I was shocked and surprised because, to have a NASCAR racing not happen when you're there at the racetrack expecting to race, it was different. You know what I mean? So you didn't really realize how big this pandemic was going to be at the time when it happened, But for me, I was driving for Johnny Davis, and man, as I flew back home to Dallas, Texas from Atlanta Motor Speedway, we were all sitting around waiting to hear from NASCAR to see, what was the next step, what was going on, and watching the news and seeing this COVID-19 just kind of just take over the whole country, the world at that. And man, we got 4 weeks into it, 5, 6, 7 weeks into it. Next thing you know, NASCAR said, "Hey, we're probably gonna start NASCAR. We're gonna get our sport cranked back up, but it's gonna be completely different. We're gonna not only is it gonna be different, we're gonna start it off at Darlington. So the sponsor that I had for that race at Darlington, NASCAR had said, hey, when we go back to work, when we open our sport back up, there's not going to be any fans in the stands. And oh, by the way, only people that are going to be allowed in the garage are the crew chiefs, the owners, and I think each car is only going to have 4 workers, per car. So that was like me made the 5th one, and the 6th was the owner. You know what I mean? So anyway, when they did open up our sport back, and it was at Darlington, South Carolina, man, I had to tell my sponsors, say, hey, y'all can't come to the race. You can't bring any customers. And my sponsor said, man, David, if we can't bring our customers, that's how we get our value, sitting on the pit box, being back there where all the action is, and, seeing all the other drivers, then we're going to sit on the sideline and wait until we can bring our customers to the racetrack. We can bring some employees. And I said, well, hey, I understand. So, when that happened, I didn't have my sponsor for Darlington. And this was like 2 or 3 weeks away from when the race was going to happen. So my phone started ringing, and some other sponsors were calling and saying, hey, David, we hear that when NASCAR racing opens back up, that they're not going to allow people in the stands. And, you're talking to them, you're telling them what you have learned from NASCAR. And man, and next thing you know, they said, well, hey, we're going to sit on the sidelines until we can bring our employees and our customers. So next thing you know, my budget, the budget I had for the year, kind of got cut even 60%, 50%. So, you guys know it takes a lot of money to run these racing teams, lots and lots of money. And thank God for the sponsors. But next thing you know, I had to go back to Johnny Davis and say, hey, buddy, hey, Johnny, it's like, hey, man, that money that I promised you for the year, not only I don't even have 50% of it, it's got to cut like 60% of it. You know what I mean? So anyway, Johnny was gracious enough, said, we'll make it work. But, he had somebody else that came in and had a little bit more funding than I had at the time. And we talked about it. And, I know I've been doing this for a long time. It takes a lot of money to run these race cars. And I said, hey, Johnny, you do what you got to do to keep JD Motorsports operating. And he said, are you sure? I said, no, I'm positive. Do what you got to do. You put in that car who's got the money, who's got the sponsorship, because that's what it takes to do this sport. And next thing you know, for the first time in 23 years, I was sitting on the sideline with no job. So, man, it was quite interesting for me, within that 8 or 9 week period that our season shut down from Atlanta until we went back to racing at Darlington. Man, a lot of stuff transpired. And I would have never thought that any of that would have happened when we left Atlanta.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And then you find yourself in a position of being a free agent of sorts. How did it come about of the rest of your season when you finished with another team? How did that all come together there? Well,
during this pandemic, I mean, the whole world, especially our country, and I'm talking to other people, other team members and other teams and other drivers. I've talked to a couple other drivers. They said, man, David, my big sponsor, they can't afford to make the payments anymore. You know what I mean? So I learned real quick that I wasn't the only one, you know what I mean? And, when our whole industry is ran on sponsorships, that's, bringing customers to the racetrack, bringing employees, engagement with the fans, engagement with the other teams and their sponsors. The whole thing works on people, fans, sponsors. It takes all of it to make it work. I realized real quick, man, that I wasn't the only one. And so my good friend Rick Ware and Bobby Dotter, I was talking to those guys, and so happened Ray Black. Ray Black was driving the 07 car for SS Greenlight Racing, Bobby Dotter. And unfortunately, like for me, Ray's sponsor, they couldn't continue to pay during this pandemic, for whatever reason, and so anyway, that opened up the opportunity with SS Greenlight to drive the 07 car in select races. And again, it takes a lot of money to run at the level we race at NASCAR race. Any 3 series, any racing at that, it's expensive. And so these team owners rely on the drivers bringing funding. And so I told Bobby Dotter and Rick Ware, I was like, hey guys, I want to run Texas. I want to run these Texas races. I want to run here. I want to run there. And they said, man, great, David, we'd love to have you. And I said, hey, we talked about the business side of it, what it would take for funding wise, and being in touch with all my sponsors, talking to all of them, I knew I had enough funding to run however many races it was, 7 or 8, 6 races. And that's how I continued on. And man, you talk about, it's not poor me. I mean, the whole world, my neighbors, my friends, everybody, this pandemic has changed our country. I feel bad for some of my friends have lost their jobs. They're struggling. Some of my other friends, their companies are doing great. They're doing great. But, you just watch the news and see what's going on. It's like, man, I'm very blessed. I'm very thankful, even though for the first time in my 23-year career that I'm unemployed, at least I have a shot to race in 5 or 6, 7 more races. You know what I mean? And I'm going to be okay. But man, this was a big deal, not only in our industry of NASCAR racing, for everyone involved, for the whole country. You know what I mean? So I was just thankful that Rick Ware and Bobby Dotter gave me an opportunity to go race some more, do what I love to do in a competitive car. We had some great races, and to be back at the racetrack. And man, like we were talking earlier, being back at the racetrack, it wasn't the same, man. It was the weirdest thing ever. When I went back to the racetrack for the first time with no race fans in the stands, no sponsors at the racetrack with me, you couldn't bring a friend. You couldn't bring your wife. You couldn't bring your girlfriend. You couldn't bring your kids. I mean, nobody. It was a ghost town in the garage. You know what I mean? It was just so different. And I think NASCAR, they did a heck of a job to be able to bring the sport back, open the sport back up, and to make it run and get to the championship races at Phoenix. I think NASCAR did a tremendous job. And man, from the time we went back to racing at Darlington and to the time Sunday evening when Chase Elliott was crowned our 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion, a lot of things happened to make that ingredients to be able to crown 3 champions in our sport. I mean, you guys were involved in all the changes, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I can't commend NASCAR enough for everything they did and all the changes and all the craziness we all went through to get to Phoenix, Arizona to crown 3 champions in our sport. It was amazing.
No, it's truly amazing when you look at how everything NASCAR did, all the moving pieces, and how many times they had changed the schedule over and over just to try and get this 36 race season underway. And I hope Tyler can attest to this too, working in the media. I mean, I was at that last Phoenix race, the last normal weekend for the entire country before everything started shutting down. And I look back on it and was kind of working as a multimedia guy that weekend, writing stories, doing some radio stuff, shooting photos. And I'm really glad I did that, because gosh, you look back now and we don't have access to go shoot photos. They do everything on Zoom. So everybody's kind of covering the same thing. But most importantly, when you look that weekend, there were 54,000 people in the grandstands there at Phoenix Raceway on that Sunday. And then everything just started shutting down the next few days after. And I know Tyler was at the racetrack for the first time back in July at the Kansas Race Week, and I didn't get back to a racetrack till October. And man, way different. You go and they're taking your temperatures. They're doing all this contact tracing stuff. They're wanting to see, hey, have you been tested for COVID? What's everything going on here? And I'm sure it's even more rigorous from a competitor standpoint, but what a night and day difference from going to covering these races in February and March to what they were doing in October. And the fact that they were able to start allowing a little more media and some of these fans at certain racetracks, it was great to see. And at Phoenix a couple of weeks back, I know they allowed about 8,000 people there, and about 20 of us in the media got to be inside the media center. And man, I'll tell you, that room was really weird to be looking around and thinking, wow, there should be about 80 to 90 people in this media center right now. There's only just a handful of people. It was a weird, eerie feeling for sure. Grateful to be there, but definitely different times from 8 months ago.
Yeah, certainly. It's a different world. It's kind of like you think about the world after 9/11. September 12th was a different atmosphere than September 11th. And this pandemic has affected us all in some way, shape, or form. I cover other sports as part of my radio job beyond just racing, cover everything from, college football to the NFL to, college basketball and Major League Baseball. And some of those sports we haven't even yet been able to return as media members yet. We're covering everything like we're doing this show from Zoom at home. It's just totally different. And a lot of this stuff is going to be the long-term effects, that it's not going to go back to the way that things were before. David, what is it that you miss most when it comes to a typical race weekend to the way that things were beforehand? What do you miss most from the way things are now compared to what they were?
Man, that's a great question. And I'm going to pause for a minute, Dominic, and Tyler, and go back and talk about this pandemic and how different it was and what NASCAR did to bring it all together to get the 3 champions. What didn't change? Everything was different, every part of it, every aspect of it. But what was the same and what was great? The racing on the racetrack was unbelievable. I don't care if it was the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, or the Cup Series, man, the racing was great. And I was amazed when they said, hey, no practice, no qualifying. And for the first time, the cars just got on the racetrack, and when they dropped a green flag to start the race, how competitive it was. It was amazing, So, man, I tell you, the crew chiefs, the drivers, the engineers, these teams, everybody involved in NASCAR racing, you don't get to that level of the NASCAR Truck Series, Xfinity Series, or the Cup Series. Everybody's a champion. Everybody's good. And, man, everybody proved it because the racing was unbelievable. I loved every bit of it, the ones I were in and the ones I hated to watch on TV, because let me tell you, when I was supposed to be out there racing and I wasn't, dude, I mean, I'd rather be beat up on the street. You know what I mean? I really, being in a fight and getting beat up, getting hurt and getting a rib broke or something, that hurt. That didn't hurt as much as it was not being there racing, man. That was tough, dude. I still think about it. And, man, you talking about hurt, man. I'd love to compete. I love to be part of that weekend and to get in that race car and try to win races, man, and having to watch it on TV and not be a part of it, man. Nobody ever really know what that feels like, but, man, that's a deep hurt. But man, the biggest part you're asking me, Tyler, what I missed about when I did go back to racing and there was no fans, I missed not having my sponsors there. The people that give you the money to be able to race at the level we race at, not having those people there to enjoy it with me, because they have a love for the sport as well. They're passionate about it, and to see them see that race car with their company name on it, and it just, the the enthusiasm they have, their customers being there, sometimes their employees, and watch them act like kids in a candy store in the garage area, sitting on the pit box during the race, you know, giving them radios so they can hear the communication between myself and the crew chief, going to the driver's meeting. I miss the people, man. I miss the people. I miss the people that back me up, my sponsors, give me the money to do what I love to do. And that's the biggest thing. I miss the race fans. I miss my sponsors. I miss the other sponsors. You know, it's not just about me. It's about the whole industry, other drivers, other teams, their sponsors being there. A lot of those people, they come over and they meet the people that are helping me, our sponsors. They get to know everybody. Our sport is like a big family, you know? And when you didn't have that, it was strange, man. It was a strange feeling. And, you know, when I talk to all my sponsors about the sport, I'm selling the experience of it. You know, bring your customers, bring your employees, meet the other sponsors. Just being there at a NASCAR race, being on the inside where you guys are, where the competitors are, where the teams are, where the race cars are. I mean, you see Dale Earnhardt Jr. walking around. You see Jeff Gordon. I mean, you might see a movie star or two. I mean, you know, you see a lot of the NFL. I mean, you just never know who you're going to see in the garage or who's going to be there. I miss the people side of it. You know what I mean? I love to get in the race car, and when they drop that green flag, man, there's nothing more that makes my heart beat than that. Besides my wife and my kids. That's what makes me, you know, what makes me get out of bed every morning. You know what I mean? That's what drives me. I love what we do. But man, the weirdest thing was just, and the biggest thing was the people not being at the racetrack was just really was sad to see, sad to be a part of it. But I was so thankful that NASCAR, and you guys talked about it. Dominic talked about it, the protocols, the COVID-19 protocols to keep everybody safe, to keep the officials safe, to keep the team safe, to keep the drivers safe. I think they did a heck of a job to get to the end of the season and to crown 3 champions, to crown Chase Elliott and, you know, Austin Cindric and Sheldon Creed. I mean, there was a lot that went on from Darlington until we crowned those 3 champions in NASCAR. It's just, I'm still amazed what NASCAR pulled off and how they did it. And with the help from everybody that's involved, with the media guys, with the teams, with everybody, you know, it's just something to be proud of our industry. And again, it was just unbelievable.
No doubt about it. This is episode number 1 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr, Tyler Jones here alongside Dominic Aragon of the RacingExperts.com. And David, we're going to talk more about your backstory, where you came from next week. But I do want to ask you about, in case somebody may just be hearing about David Starr for the very first time, how would you describe yourself and what's your background, your story, David?
Man, I'm just, that's, I don't like talking about myself, first of all, but man, I'm just a normal guy, loves to race. You know, I'm just, I love people. I love life. You know, people say, man, you're always happy, you're always smiling, you know what I mean? Even when you're not having a good day at the racetrack. But man, when you get out of bed every day and you got 2 great kids and a wife and you get to do what I get to do, I mean, it's always a great day, you know? And my dream started when I was 3-4 years old, you know, and it was just a dream. Most dreams, you know, they're hard to, you know, most dreams for me, they're hard to accomplish, you know, and if they're, you know, to be honest about it, I didn't make it as a NASCAR race car driver until I was, man, well, how old was I? I was 27, 28 years old, you know, though, you know, when you say 27, 28 years old now, you're over the hill in our industry. You know what I mean?
Cup champions, 24 years old this year.
Absolutely. You know, there you go. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So, yeah, man. So, man, I'm a mechanic by trade. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, that's what I did for a living before I made it as a professional NASCAR race car driver. And, man, I'm just a guy. I just love people. I like to work. I like everything clean. I like my yard done, but man, I still pinch myself just because that dream was so big. And it took so much hard work, and it took a lot of people. We'll talk about this down the road, but behind every successful race car driver to make it to NASCAR professional level, there's a lot of great people. There's a lot of hard work, a lot of determination, a lot of heart. And I don't think really people understand what it took, because I never stopped dreaming and I never stopped working. And the sacrifices you made, I didn't get married till I was much older, because you would never want to drag somebody else. You wouldn't want your shadow or your partner to have to live and go through the things that I went through, and I'm sure other people went to get to that dream, But once you made it there, I mean, it was a gift from God, a miracle. But it worked out, and man, I love life. I love what I do, and I love that we're having a podcast here. That's pretty cool.
Oh, that is awesome. Dominic, you've been involved in the sport for a long time. Not only are you the editor-in-chief of the Racing Experts, but you founded that website. Tell me your story, Dominic. How did you get involved with the sport of NASCAR racing?
Well, I think it's the most ironic thing, because I look at my immediate family, and nobody in my family even remotely follows auto racing or NASCAR. But when I was 4 years old, right, Santa Claus brought a bunch of games on the old PlayStation 1. And one of those games was NASCAR 99. So the interest sparked as a 4.5, 5-year-old, and just kept playing that, and grew to really love the sport, was watching it on a weekly basis as a 10-year-old in 2004. And you know what? And I think maybe as a journalist, this is one of the better traits, or one of the good traits, maybe not, but I'm a naturally curious and nosy person. I love to find out information. And I kind of found out, hey, maybe there's a way to kind of tie all this together. As a kid, I always wanted to do something news-wise or media-related. And in high school, I had an opportunity to really start kind of covering this, the school paper, Grants High School, man. I got to give everybody credit there, because they were really, really supportive of all this. My teachers, the people who were running the English department and the school paper, they're like, yeah, if you can get an interview with so-and-so, go ahead and we'll run it in the newspaper. We'll run it on the school website. And sure enough, they were able to do that. And we were able to get some interviews for this newspaper with the school and run these stories online. And that was like early 2010. And as the summer started going on, I was like, you know what? It'd be really cool to really start doing this on a more consistent basis. So I reached out to the editor of a website, and I won't name the website because that's not fair. They're still around and they're not here to say anything otherwise. But long story short, I did apply with another current NASCAR media website. I got turned down. And if there's anything you all know about me, I don't take no for an answer. So it just kind of fueled it up even more. And I said, you know what? I don't even know what I'm doing here, but I'm going to start my own website just to prove these people wrong. And in August 2010, the Racing Experts got launched, and we were covering the sport, doing some recaps every week, and had a small team behind us that really, really pushed and believed in what we were doing. And at that time, too, J-Ski was a really, really big NASCAR hub for news. And we were able to break a lot of stories with getting stuff on J-Ski. And in fact, Dave, I don't know if you remember, but you guys had that announcement with Levine Family Racing in 2011. You were one of our first interviews back in the day. So that's how far back Dave and I go. And this thing just continued to snowball, and NASCAR really recognized us in 2014. We started getting approved to cover races and go to the racetrack. In 2016, earned the annual credential, and we partnered up with ESPN Radio Albuquerque. So a lot of the stuff we'd gather at the track would get run on the station, and it helped fill in with their motorsports show out in Albuquerque. And we recently registered everything with an LLC, so everything's official. What started off as a fun hobby has now turned into a legit business, and you couldn't have scripted anything any better. I mean, had somebody told me 10 years ago this is what would have happened, definitely wouldn't have believed it. Would have only dreamt of being around the sport. Because I think, I don't know, I can't speak for you, Tyler, but definitely for me as a kid, I would have loved to have made it as a race car driver. And hey, still haven't ruled anything out on getting behind the wheel of something. But if I couldn't be driving the cars, I still wanted to be around the sport somehow. And I kind of found this little avenue with the racing experts and the affiliation with the radio station out there in Albuquerque, which we still have a good relationship with, and we do work with those guys. So it's been amazing. I've been to so many parts of the country. I've met so many amazing people, you two included, that would have otherwise never happened had I gotten turned down for that spot 10 years ago, and I just feel that passion even more.
That's awesome, Dominic. Now, as far as I go, when it comes to my connection with NASCAR and covering this sport and such, similar to Dominic, I got tied in by a video game as well. When I was, about 4 or 5 years old, one Christmas, my parents bought me the NASCAR Heat computer game on the PC. And you got Dale Jarrett in the blue 88 Ford, Jeff Gordon in the Rainbow Warriors colors, Dale Earnhardt in the Goodwrench number 3 Chevy. And I was playing that every day. It was my favorite game. Eventually, one day, I turned on the TV and I actually saw it on. I'm like, oh, wow, this is legit. It actually saw it firsthand. I think it was the Bud Shootout was the first race I watched, like 04, something like that. Got into that, started watching it religiously every single week. And, went to my first race at Texas Motor Speedway in 2012. And then a couple of years later, it was time for me to go to college. And moved up to Lawrence, where I live now, to this day. And, we're only 30 minutes away from Kansas Speedway. And I made up my mind, I need to find a way. I was working part-time at the radio station, and I was doing some writing for the student newspaper and such like that. I just made up my mind, I need to be there one way or the other, whether it's covering it or as a fan or something, I just need to go. Well, I've been doing a podcast that I started since 2011, the Jones Report, and one of my regular guests on the show was Adam Alexander. I'm sure you guys know, co-host of NASCAR Race Hub and play-by-play voice of the Xfinity Series in FS1. And Adam, he was a regular on my show, and he offered to get me a credential through Fox to go cover the race. And so I did and got connected with folks up there. Incredible experience. Got to shadow him and all the Fox people, Caitlin Vincey and Jeff Hammond and Phil Parsons and several others. And just fell in love with the sport. Was at Kansas Speedway every time they were in town. And then within the last couple of years, Matt Humphrey, who's the head of PR for NASCAR, he approaches me and says, Tyler, you do a great job covering the races here at Kansas Speedway. They were already setting me up with interviews with different drivers and such, and said, we'd love to have you anywhere, quite frankly, not just here. And I said, well, fine then. Let's go to the Daytona 500. So I went the first time in 2019, went again in 2020. Incredible experience. And now I find myself, try to be, at a few different races every year and covering this sport along with the other sports I cover with the Kansas City Chiefs, the world champions, as well as, the Sporting Kansas City and the Royals and the University of Kansas, where I went, and their great basketball program. So, it's just been cool. If I wanted to have moved up here and gone to school here, then there's no way I'd be in this position. It was covering Kansas Speedway that led me to this point to be here with you guys, and I'm certainly grateful for that, and the fine folks at Kansas Speedway for all they've done for this sport, and that track has produced some great racing over the years as well. So, David, that's kind of our backgrounds, myself and Dominic, the short stories of sorts for both.
Yeah, short and sweet.
You know what's so cool about it? It's man, I appreciate what y'all sharing that with me. But man, that's what's cool about about NASCAR racing. It's the people you meet. Dominic. I've known Dominic longer than I've known Tyler, but when I first met Dominic, he was a kid. He was hungry. You could tell he was eager. And, I would see him here and there. He'd interview me. He'd interview other drivers. And I saw him working and you didn't see him for a couple of races. Then you'd see him. And, that's what's cool about the sport. You know what I mean? It's like if you a race car driver, a crew chief, a fabricator, an engine builder, a media guy, the broadcast side, the radio side, the newspaper and the magazines, just hearing your story that's inspiring. You know what I mean? Because, you know, you had a goal, a dream, and nothing was going to get in the way. And Dominic, you made it happen. And I mean, Tyler, you made Dominic, you made it happen. And Tyler, I mean, hearing your story about Adam Alexander, man, that guy's been around forever, legendary media guy and broadcaster and our sport. And, you know, I mean, that's what I love hearing. I love hearing the behind the scenes, you know, hey, man, how did this happen? How did you get to this point, you know, and hearing y'all's story, it's just, you know, it's inspiring, you know, to see and the people, you know, and again, you know, I say this a lot, but, you know, we're in auto racing, NASCAR racing. It's about engines and gear ratios and transmission ratios and, you know, springs and shocks and wedge. And, you know, it's all about racing as I know it, you know what I mean? But it's the stories of how we got there and what you did, the sacrifice you made it, and the people that you got introduced to, and they introduced you to this person. The next thing you know, look at us. We're all making a living in the same industry. And that's the beauty of it is, you know, we're in the people business. NASCAR racing, you know, it's hard for people to understand that, but we're in the people business because, you know, just like Tyler and just like Dominic, just like both of you guys, there were so many people, you know, is the reason why I'm here today. And I raced at the level I race at as a professional, and just racing in general. When it started, there's so many people that gave you opportunities to introduce you to this person or let you drive the race car. You know what I mean? There's just so many inspirational people that inspired us and that mean the world to us because of the opportunities that they took on us. You know, why did they take an opportunity on me? Why did they take an opportunity on Tyler? Why did they take an opportunity on Dominic? You know why they did it? Because Dominic said it earlier, we weren't going to settle for anything less. So we wasn't going away. We knew where we wanted to go, and we were going to work hard to get there. And now look at us. You know what I mean? So it's a beautiful thing. I appreciate you guys sharing. I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. And you guys will get to know more about all three of us as we go on this journey together of this podcast each and every week here on Let's Go Racing. We got a little bit of time left, and we got a couple more things to cover. Let's start out with some news and notes. Dominic, what do you got for us?
Well, I'll tell you what, hot off the press is actually at the start of this show. Spire Motorsports announces that Corey Lajoie has signed a multi-year deal to go full-time racing in the Cup Series in a newly numbered 7 car. So I'm sure we're going to get some more details as time goes on, but that's hot off the press is actually just at the start of the show.
David, what's your reaction? Corey Lajoie headed to Spire, and I believe they might have some Hendrick backing of sorts with that team too.
Man, if you watch Corey Lajoie over the years, man, the guy has done a great job. A heck of a race car driver, funny as heck. I love watching him compete. You know, he gets everything out. He's been racing the 32 car. I watch him every week, and I'm always impressed with it because I've always thought that he's got everything that car he could get out of that car. He's ran good. I've just think he's done a great job, and I hope this opportunity for Corey puts him about 10 spots better than where he's been competing at over the last 2 or 3 years. You know, he's a tough racer, a great guy, and I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. Good for him.
And I think that shows Spire Motorsports' commitment to the sport because – okay, yeah, they buy the charter from Furniture Row Racing at the end of the 2018 season. And, yeah, they win the race with Justin Haley, and people are saying, oh, this team's not going to last more than a year. It was a money grab. And, no, by committing that they're going to have 2 full-time cars in the Cup Series, I think that shows that this team is here to stay for the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, to compete at that level and you know, to hire a driver like Corey Lajoie, give him an opportunity. And I just think the Spires Motorsports, I think, you know, they every year, yeah, obviously I think 2020 was their first or second year, but, you know, and winning that race with Justin Haley was pretty big that's a big deal. And I think you're just going to see them get better and better over time. And bringing Corey Lajoie with all his experience and his talent, that can't hurt him at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And then some other news, too, that happened over the last few days. John Hunter Nemechek making the move saying that he's leaving Front Row Motorsports. Posted 3 top 10s this year in his rookie campaign. He's going over to drive the number 4 truck for Kyle Busch Motorsports, replacing Rafael Lessard. What's your guys' reaction to that, and how do you all think he's going to do?
Well, David, John Hunter Nemechek had a pretty decent rookie year at the Cup level. You saw that with Kyle Busch Motorsports last year in the Truck Series. They didn't have the success they would have liked without Kyle Busch in the truck. This seems like this could be a very good marriage between these two.
I think it's going to be an awesome marriage. John Hunter Nemechek, golly, he was fun to watch. You guys see it too. I mean, Front Row Motorsports, what he did and that equipment. I mean, this guy was in the top 10 at times. I mean, he was impressive the entire year. It was fun to watch him. I always watch John Hunter because, man, you couldn't help but watch him. Next thing you know, he's in the top 10. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he just done a tremendous job, and I respect what he's doing. I think some people will say that he's stepping down a level or two, but I don't know if I would call that stepping down or stepping back. I think what he's doing is, I think people in our industry, these different owners and the manufacturers, he impressed me, and I know he impressed a lot of other people, but to go to the Truck Series and drive for Kyle Busch Motorsports and that type of equipment, I look for John Hunter Nemechek to win a championship in the Truck Series, and I look for Hendrick Motorsports, Roger Penske, one of these powerhouse teams to give him an opportunity. I like what he's doing. I think it's a smart move on him to do that. I think that's a great marriage with Kyle Busch. He's going to learn and pay attention to what Kyle Busch, one of the best all-time race car drivers ever, he's going to learn from Kyle Busch himself. I believe John Hunter Nemechek's going to have – you can almost guarantee that he'll be in it for the championship when it comes back down to being at the Phoenix, Arizona race. And I think if he wins the championship in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, I can see one of these powerhouse teams in the Cup side picking him up. I think it's a smart move on his part, and I look for big things in the future from John Hunter Nemechek. I think he's going to be a championship contender, no doubt about it, and I think you'll see him in one of these powerhouse Cup teams 2 years from now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was impressed by him a couple years ago when he won at Kansas Speedway in the Xfinity Series. Nobody saw that coming, and he raced really well that day. He's got a lot of talent. I'm excited to see what he could do in the Truck Series. Dominic, we got time for one or two more. What else is going on?
Yeah, certainly. Well, a little bit of old news, but old news is good news and certainly worth going over here. Recently crowned Cup Series champion Chase Elliott will be contending for his 3rd win in the Snowball Derby in early December. He's going to be fielding an entry that was announced a couple of weeks ago, but chasing his 3rd win in that premier event. And
also he's going to run the Chili Bowl in Tulsa, in my hometown. Great to see David Chase Elliott doing some other things going besides NASCAR racing.
Man, it's awesome to have the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion at the Snowball Derby. I mean, it's nothing new. That race, that's the biggest asphalt short track race in the country. It's like our Daytona 500 for short track, stock car racing. And Chase has been there in the past. And to have him show back up as a champion of our industry, the highest champion, Cup Series, it don't get any bigger than that. And to have him show back up at the Snowball Derby, all that just tells you is this guy, he's a real racer. We knew that already, but man, I love that. I love it. It doesn't matter what it is. Like you said, Dominic, Tyler, he's going to be at the Chili Bowl coming up too in December or January. And that's pretty awesome. I know his teammate, Kyle Larson will be there helping him. You know what I mean? That's going to be pretty cool for the fans to see, and pretty awesome, man. That's some big news right there.
And I think lastly here, Tyler, just to kind of touch on, when we were talking a little bit about the pandemic, and hey, this thing doesn't discriminate against anybody. Ken Squier, legendary NASCAR broadcaster over the years, he has been suffering from COVID, but Dave Moody with SiriusXM has really been updating everybody, and Ken tends to be doing a little bit better. I guess earlier today, Monday night, he was talking with some of his physical therapists and his close friends, and he's showing signs of improvement and showing signs of strength. And this is a good sign that he was asking people, what are some of the top teams doing in NASCAR in 2021? So he's asking for NASCAR updates. That's certainly a good sign.
Oh, that's great. David, Ken Squier, that's the OG right there. He's the greatest ever.
No doubt about it, man. I love hearing Ken Squier. You know, as a kid watching NASCAR racing on television, just that voice, you know, hearing Ken Squier, you know, and he'd always really pinpoint where the driver was from. You know what I mean? It just his voice is so iconic. He's so legendary in broadcasting, and what his contributions to our sport are unmeasurable. You know what I mean? You just everything he's done, and I love it when he steps in the booth when you know NBC or Fox has him step in the booth, or you get to see him at a racetrack. You know, when you're around him, you're around royalty. You know what I mean? And I'm so glad and blessed that he's getting better. You know, it's always scary for anybody to get, you know, COVID, and for him to get it at the age that Ken is. I'm glad to hear that he's getting better, and we pray that he makes a full recovery.
Absolutely. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. No question about it. We're thinking of Ken Squier and his family for sure. Before we get out of here, we'll always end the show with some fan mail questions, and there's a lot of ways that you can ask us. You can tweet us at Star Podcast or hit us up on our Facebook page. And Dominic, we got an email set up now, right?
We do have an email set up. So if you'd like to email in your questions, send them off at davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. It's all one word, no underscores, no periods. Again, that's davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. We'll see him in the inbox, and we might even see him on a future show.
Yes, and there are 2 R's in Star. Remember that.
Yes.
Here's a couple questions. This first one comes from Lori. Lori writes, David, what's your favorite activity that you like to do other than racing?
That's a tough question to answer because that's all I do is race. You know what I mean? And that's a great question, Lori. I appreciate you writing in or asking that question. You know, my uncle Mike Starr owns the Team Texas High Performance Driving School that's based at the Texas Motor Speedway. And, you know, my Uncle Mike started that driving school back in 1990 at Texas World Speedway. But one of the things that I love to do is go over when we're having corporate events or when we're open to the public, and jump in a race car, give a race car ride, or be an instructor where you got a race fan that's driving the race car. You know, and I like to sit on the passenger side and help them, you know what I mean? And I always think that's fun. I love that, man, because we have so many men and women that come through the racing school and come drive race cars. It's just incredible. I have a lot of joy doing that. And, you know, I love going to the lake, being out on the lake with my kids and my wife. Man, I like to do a lot of stuff, man. It's just, it's endless, but that's one of the things I really get a lot of enjoyment out of is being a part of our NASCAR racing school that we have. It's called Team Texas High Performance Driving School, and seeing the race fans get inside a real NASCAR race car and drive 150 miles an hour with 9 other cars on the racetrack, and you're almost like you're Jeff Gordon, you know what I mean? And that's a really cool experience to be able to experience that and watch people love to do what I love to do. It's pretty cool.
Oh, man. We're going to talk plenty about the driving school down the line. And, of course, we got to talk some Whataburger. That's a love and a passion that all 3 of us have.
Absolutely.
We'll get to those things in future episodes for sure. But that racing school, one of these days, Dominic and I are going to go out there and drive David around, and hopefully we can give him a little bit of a scare of some sorts when we do there at Texas Motor Speedway.
Another thing, let me stop you real quick. Since, you know, y'all hit on it earlier, during this pandemic that our whole country's been in, the world's been in, I've had a little bit more time at home. Man, let me tell you what, man, the joy and fun it's been to hang out with my little boys at sporting events, football games, baseball games, soccer games, man. You talking about, man, you know, that passion I have and still that love to compete. It's like I'm almost competing through them. Sometimes I got to watch myself, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, I get overly excited, and, you know, as your kids compete in any sport, you're like right there with them, and man, that's, I tell you what, the last 8 months, that's been a lot of fun for me as well, so that's been really cool. And man, your kids will teach you a thing or two. And it's kind of interesting, the conversations I have with my boys about being tougher, being more competitive, and being a good sportsman, man. It's amazing. I'll tell you a quick story real quick. My oldest son was playing basketball, and I wasn't at the game. And my wife, she said, "Hey, you need to talk to your son." It's like one of unfortunately, their team was beat in this particular game, but DJ, my oldest boy, was hitting some really good 3-pointers. Well, they lost the game, and anyway, when the game was over, one of the other competitors came over to tell him, "Hey, man, you're really great shooter," and it was giving him a compliment. And my wife was standing right there, and she said DJ didn't really shake his hand and tell him, "Hey, great game." He had a bad attitude about losing the game, and I can appreciate that because he's passionate about it, what I mean? But I want him to understand there's a way to win and there's a way to lose, and when a competitor comes over and gives you a compliments you, I want you to stick your hand out there and compliment them back and tell them, "Hey, great game." And but anyway, so when I got home, my wife told me this on the phone. I was at a race, and when I got home from the race, I got with DJ and I said, "Hey, man, we need to talk about this situation that my wife was telling me about." And he said, "Dad, you're used to losing. You lose every week." And I'm like, "Man, oh my God, man." And I was like, I had steam coming out of my ears, you know what I mean? So we had a long talk about, nobody likes to lose. I can assure you that. And especially your dad. I hate it because I'm a winner, but you gotta learn how to lose. It's a hard thing to do. I'm a sore loser. You show me a good loser, and I'll show you, and I'll show you somebody that's not a winner. You know what I mean? It's like we all want to win, but when we don't win, you got to win with I don't know. You gotta be a good sportsman about it. You got to learn from it. Again, I was just trying to teach him to be a great sportsman, and sometimes we're not always going to win. So anyway, that was kind of a crazy story that I kind of had to catch myself because he said, "Dad, you used to losing. You lose every week." I'm like, "Oh my God," you know what I mean? So let me up. But your kids will teach you stuff as well.
That's fine. One more question for you. We're going to combine questions from Virginia and Vicky. They asked similar ones, so we'll make this one question. David, what is your favorite track and why?
Man, that's always a cool question. You know what I mean? And as a competitor, I love to compete. I don't care if I'm at Martinsville, Virginia, or Daytona International Speedway, or the Texas Motor Speedway. What we racing next? That's my favorite track. I love them all. But let's get real here. You know what I mean? Martinsville, Bristol, man, I love that physical beating and banging. I've had a lot of success at Martinsville. It's one of my favorite. Las Vegas Motor Speedway, the racetrack in St. Louis. Man, I love them all, but I think any competitor will tell you they're probably their favorite ones are the ones they've won at before. You know what I mean? Las Vegas, St. Louis, Martinsville, Phoenix, Arizona, California, California. But I love them all, but they are my favorites. I guess my favorite track is my home track, which is the Texas Motor Speedway. And me and my old friend, my good buddy Brendan Gaughan, Brendan used to come when we were racing the truck series. He would win truck races. I mean, he won 4 or 5 of them at the Texas Motor Speedway. And he would always jab at me, say, "Hey, man, I bet you could trade places with me." I said, "Dude, I would love to trade places with you, But anyway, when I won my first NASCAR truck race, it was at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And before I did that, he was winning races at the Texas Motor Speedway. So I was just thankful that I was able to jab back at him, you know what I mean? And say, "Hey, I got one here at your racetrack. What do you think about that?" So, But, man, I love them all. But Texas Motor Speedway would be my favorite one. And then my second favorite would be the Daytona International Speedway. God, I love Daytona. As a kid growing up, loving NASCAR racing, when you thought about racing, you thought about Richard Petty and the Daytona International Speedway. You know what I mean? That's just the first two things. Daytona and Richard Petty were the first things I kind of learned as a little boy. You know what I mean? So Texas Motor Speedway and the Daytona International Speedway are my favorite racetracks.
That's great. I love those tracks as well, and they hold special meaning for me for different reasons. Dominic, real quick, what are some of your favorite tracks, man?
And I love going to Phoenix Raceway. That's just a short skip here from good old Grants, New Mexico, about 5.5 hours in the car, and you're at Phoenix International Raceway. And outside of that, too, you can't go wrong with Daytona. Just seeing Daytona International Speedway and driving up to it and knowing the history that's at that place, it's awesome to go to a race there. And Kansas Speedway is certainly a favorite of mine. I mean, and I'm kind of mirroring David here. I love going to that next race, and you see different people at different tracks and different weekends, and you're going to see certain people at certain places. But yeah, those ones that are close to home, I think, just hit a little different.
Yeah, I got to go Daytona. I know that's the easy answer, but I love Homestead too. I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show, I'm getting it mixed up, still thinking it was the championship race. But they did a great job hosting that championship for years, and it's got the old Atlanta feel to it there at Homestead. That's one of my favorite tracks. Probably those two would be my favorites as far as that goes. But, guys, this has flown by. It's been a lot of fun. We appreciate all the listeners for joining us. And you can subscribe to Let's Go Racing with David Starr on Apple, Spotify, Google Play. And you can also watch the show on YouTube as well. And you can reach out to us on social media as well. Dominic, where can people find us there?
They can find us at facebook.com/Star Podcast, and the same with Twitter, or David Starr Podcast on Facebook. Let me correct that. And then on Twitter, it's Star Podcast. They can find me at Dominic Aragon. Reach out with any questions. We'll certainly love to get some more questions on the show here. And we do look forward to interacting with everybody. This is, like we said, the first of many.
Yeah, and you got some stuff coming up on the racingexperts.com this week, too, I imagine people ought to check out?
Yeah, we try to do our best to cover the sport. And Justin Malillo, I got to give him a shout-out. He's our managing editor, and he's my business partner. He does a great job covering the iRacing series and everything that's going on virtually. And he and I have been working together. We've been doing a lot of fan giveaways. So if you like winning free NASCAR merchandise, all you got to do is just follow us along on Twitter and be on standby. We've been giving away a lot of cool things about twice a week.
I do a morning show here in Kansas every weekday, Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 a.m. That's what I do. And also got the Jones Report podcast out every Monday and Thursday, also on Apple, Spotify, and Google Play. Certainly check that out there. David, what's your week look like, man, before we run? What do you got going on the next couple of days?
Man, putting presentations together. Courtney Kling, my assistant, man, we're putting sponsor proposals together, have some meetings, have about 3 meetings coming up for this week. And then the cool thing is my uncle Mike Starr, he's built a road racing car, and we're going to be racing in the World, I think it's called the World Racing League at the new racetrack in Austin, Texas called COTA, the COTA track. And it's kind of cool. There's an 8-hour race on Saturday. It's kind of an enduro race, 8-hour race on Saturday. And we backed that up on Sunday with an 8-hour race. So, man, when he said, hey, man, you want to go down to Austin to the COTA track and do some enduro racing and some road course racing, I said, absolutely, man, because, one of the things that we'll talk about that we'll dive into, talk more about it in the future, is what NASCAR has added. They've added another race to the schedule. It's in Austin, Texas, the COTA track. And I'm looking forward to going down there and just running some laps, doing some racing and getting used to the racetrack. So when I go back in 2021, May of 2021, I'll know the racetrack and I won't have any excuses.
That'll be great. We're looking forward to it. Guys, thanks for joining us. Episode 1 of Let's Go Racing is in the books. Time to put out the checkered flag on this episode. We'll see you right back here next week for another edition of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. For David Starr and Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones saying so long. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.